The moving day started like any other. The sky was cloudy, but there were no signs of a storm. The couple, Lucas and Mariana, along with their 9-year-old daughter, Sophia, parked the truck at the entrance of their new home, eager to start a new chapter of their lives. The house was an old building but well-maintained, with a dark wooden facade and a slightly neglected garden. There was something both cozy and unsettling about the architecture. A strange feeling hung in the air, but the excitement of the move made any unease feel insignificant. The realtor, Mr. Ator, was waiting for them on the porch, wearing a smile that didn't quite match his tired gaze. He was a thin, pale man in a slightly worn suit. When Lucas got out of the car, Ator extended his hand, shaking it with a grip that was a little stronger than necessary. "I'm glad you made it. Ready to start a new life," he said, trying to sound enthusiastic. "Yes, finally. This house is perfect for us," Mariana replied as she watched Sophia run through the garden. The realtor hesitated for a moment, as if he was about to say something important, but then held back. Instead, he pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and handed it to Lucas. "Here are the keys and this list." Lucas raised an eyebrow and opened the envelope, pulling out a carefully folded, yellowed piece of paper. The words were written by hand, in a careful but slightly shaky handwriting. House rules. 1. Always lock all the doors before midnight. 2. Never look out the attic window after dark. 3. If you hear someone calling your name inside the house, ignore it. 4. Don't leave mirrors uncovered during the night. 5. Never open the door for anyone after 3 a.m., no matter what they say. 6. If you find the basement door open, close it immediately and leave the house for at least 2 hours. Lucas laughed, shaking his head. "What's this? Some neighborhood superstition?" Mr. Ator didn't laugh. His face turned serious, and he looked at the family as if assessing whether they should know more or not. "This is very important. Follow these rules to the letter." "But why?" Mariana asked, suspicious. "Just follow them. You'll understand." The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Mr. Ator glanced at the house for a moment, then turned and walked quickly to the car, leaving no room for more questions. Lucas and Mariana exchanged glances. Sophia, unaware of the conversation, played in the garden, singing to herself. "Well, welcome to our new home," Lucas said, forcing a smile and slipping the paper into his pocket. They didn't know yet, but those rules weren't just suggestions. They were warnings, and soon they would learn this in the worst possible way. The first night in the new house should have been peaceful. After a whole day of carrying boxes and arranging furniture, Lucas, Mariana, and Sophia were finally able to relax. They had dinner together, sitting amidst piles of stuff still out of place, laughing at the mess. "Tomorrow we finish the rest," Lucas said, stretching. Mariana nodded and glanced at their daughter, who was already yawning. "Shall we go upstairs, Sophia? Time to sleep." The little girl nodded, grabbing her teddy bear, and followed her mom up the stairs. Lucas stayed a little longer in the living room, going through some of the moving papers. That's when he felt something in his pocket, the sheet with the house rules. He unfolded it and read the instructions again. Always lock all the doors before midnight. He glanced at the clock on the wall. 11:57 p.m. With a sigh, he got up and checked the locks. The back door was unlocked. He locked it. The front door, too. He turned the key, feeling a slight chill as he did so. "That's nonsense," he thought, folding the paper back up. He climbed into bed next to Mariana, who was already asleep. The house was quiet, cozy. It didn't take long before he drifted off as well. 3:12 a.m. A faint noise woke Mariana up. It was rhythmic, A sound like tap, tap, tap. She blinked a few times, trying to orient herself. The room was dark, but the moonlight cast silhouettes on the wall. Then she heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. Mariana sat up in bed, her heart starting to race. The sound was coming from downstairs, from the front door. Someone was knocking. She nudged Lucas, who groaned before opening his eyes. Lucas, there's someone at the door. It took him a second to process. What? They're knocking on the door. Lucas listened. The sound was soft but persistent. Tap, tap, tap. He slowly got up, a chill running down his spine. That's when he remembered the rule. Never open the door for anyone after 3 a.m., no matter what they say. He and Mariana exchanged a look. It could be a neighbor, she whispered, or not. They stayed there, motionless, as the sound continued. Then a voice. Daddy. Lucas felt the blood drain from his face. It was Sophia's voice. Daddy, let me in. Mariana jumped up instantly. What? But... She looked to the side. Sophia was lying in bed, hugging her teddy bear, deeply asleep. The voice from the other side repeated, now with more urgency. Daddy, let me in, please. Mariana put her hand to her mouth, her eyes wide. Lucas couldn't move. The air in the room felt thick. Tap, tap, tap. This time, the knock was louder. He grabbed Mariana's hand, pulling her back. Silence came suddenly. No more knocks. No more voice. The clock read 3:15 a.m. Lucas took a deep breath. Let's go back to bed. We're not opening that door. Mariana nodded, trembling. They lay back down, but it took a while for them to fall asleep. The house was silent again, but Lucas swore that, deep in his mind, he could still hear a whisper, so close, chuckling softly. It was just rules. But what happened to those who broke them? They were starting to find out. The next morning, Lucas and Mariana barely spoke about what had happened. They were still shaken, but they preferred to pretend nothing had occurred. Maybe it was a nightmare, maybe just a trick of the mind. Sophia, unaware of the events, cheerfully came downstairs for breakfast. Mom, can I play in the garden after school? Mariana hesitated. Never stay outside after sunset. The phrase from the note came to her mind as a warning. Sure, honey, but just a little bit, okay? Before the sun goes down. Sophia smiled and went back to eating. Lucas grabbed his phone and sent a message to the realtor who sold them the house. Eduardo, we need to talk. These rules. Something strange happened last night. No reply. He furrowed his brow. He gripped the phone tighter. Mariana noticed. So, what did he say? Nothing. He's not responding. She exchanged a worried glance with her husband, but tried to push the fear aside. It was still too early to jump to conclusions. The day passed without major issues. Sophia played in the garden after school, Lucas and Mariana finished organizing the move, and the house started to feel more like a real home. By late afternoon, Mariana called Sophia inside. Honey, it's getting dark. Come on. The little girl pouted but obeyed. 6:42 p.m. Mariana locked the door and let out a sigh of relief. Dinner was peaceful. For the first time since the move, the family felt at ease. But at night, everything changed. 3:03 a.m. Lucas woke up to a strange noise. It wasn't knocking on the door this time. It was something subtler, a dragging of feet, a soft but steady sound, sliding down the hallway upstairs. He felt his breath catch in his throat. Beside him, Mariana was still asleep. The sound continued. Lucas slowly turned his head to look at the bedroom door. The hallway light was off, but he saw a shadow under the crack of the door. Bare feet, standing there, breathing. His heart pounded in his chest. Then the shadow moved. The feet began to drag again, heading for the other room, Sophia's room. Lucas jumped up from the bed and nudged Mariana. Wake up. She opened her eyes, confused. What? Lucas placed a finger on his lips, signaling for silence. Then he pointed to the door. Mariana looked. There was no shadow anymore. But now they heard something far worse. The doorknob to Sophia's room turned. Click. The door slowly creaked open. Sophia screamed. Mariana jumped out of bed, bolting down the hallway. Lucas was right behind her. The light in their daughter's room flickered, oscillating as if something was interfering with it. Sophia was curled up in bed, crying. Mom! Dad! Mariana scooped her up in her arms, while Lucas looked around. The room was empty, but the window was open. The cold night air rushed in through it, making the curtains flutter. Lucas ran over and looked outside. The dark street, the trees swaying. And down below, on the sidewalk, a man, tall, standing under the street lamp, his face covered by the shadow. He was staring directly at the house. Lucas felt his stomach churn. He slammed the window shut and locked it. When he looked again, the man was gone. Mariana hugged Sophia, trying to calm her down. Lucas gritted his teeth. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't imagination. That house wasn't empty. Someone or something was there with them. And maybe the rules weren't just instructions. Maybe they were a desperate warning. The next day dawned silent. The house felt suffocating, as if it had absorbed the fear from the night before. Mariana made breakfast without saying a word. Lucas sat at the table, staring at his phone. No reply from the realtor. Sophia didn't want to talk about what had happened. She just wanted to go to school and get out of there. Lucas drove her to school, and along the way, he checked the rearview mirror repeatedly. He felt like they were being watched. When he returned home, he found Mariana standing in the middle of the living room, holding the note with the rules. "We can't ignore this anymore," she said, her voice trembling. Lucas walked over. "I know. Something entered Sophia's room last night, and I saw a man on the street, standing and looking at the house." Mariana stared at him, horrified. "What?" Lucas nodded. "But when I closed the window and looked again, he was gone." Mariana squeezed the note between her fingers. "There's something you need to see." She led him to the front door and pointed to the doorframe. There, marked in the wood, were deep scratches, as if something had tried to get in. Lucas felt his heart race. "That wasn't here before." "I know. And there's something else." She showed him the inside of the door. There was a strange symbol carved there, almost imperceptible, like a protection. "What does it mean?" Lucas asked. "I don't know, but I think the house has been sealed against something." They exchanged a look. "We need to get out of here," Mariana said. Lucas agreed. "Let's wait for Sophia to come back from school, grab some bags, and leave." But they didn't know it was already too late. 6:45 p.m. Sophia was playing in the garden, running through the grass. Mariana was in the kitchen, keeping an eye on the clock. Lucas was in the office, trying to call the realtor one last time. It was Mariana who noticed first. The sun was setting. She dropped everything and ran outside. "Sophia, come inside now." The little girl stopped. "But Mom..." "Now." Sophia was startled and ran inside. But Mariana stood still. For a moment, she had the impression that something was moving between the trees in the backyard. Shadows. Too fast. She felt a chill in her stomach and closed the door. Lucas appeared in the living room. "What happened?" Mariana locked the door. "I saw something outside." They exchanged a look. Silence. Then came the first sound. It wasn't a knock. It was a finger slowly sliding across the front door, scratching. Mariana covered her mouth with her hand, trying to hold back a sob. Lucas motioned for her to stay quiet. The sound continued, scraping, drawing something into the wood. Lucas held his breath. He knew they had broken a rule. Sophia had been outside too long. The door shook, and then, from under the crack, A finger appeared, pale, long, slipping into the house. Lucas pulled Mariana back, trembling. They stood frozen, not moving. The finger shifted, as if it were trying to sense the surroundings. Then it withdrew. Silence. Mariana gripped Lucas's hand tightly. He hesitated. Then, slowly, he peeked through the peephole. What he saw on the other side made his blood run cold. Someone was there, but it wasn't a normal man. The figure was tall, thin, with arms that were unnaturally long. Its skin was gray, hairless, without any human features. And the head, it was tilted to the side, as if it didn't know what to do. Lucas held his breath. The creature started to smile, and then it mimicked Sophia's voice. "Mom, let me in. I'm stuck outside." Mariana stifled a scream. Lucas stepped back, pulling her with him. The scratching on the door came back, stronger this time. Something outside wanted in, and this time it wasn't going to give up so easily. The room was engulfed in complete silence. Lucas and Mariana stood in the middle of the living room, breathing as quietly as possible. The creature outside was still there. Sophia's voice echoed through the door. "Mommy, please, let me in." But Sophia was inside the house. Mariana gripped Lucas's arm so tightly that her nails dug into his skin. The scratching on the door intensified, as if something were clawing at the wood with massive nails. Then, a new voice emerged. This time, it was Lucas's voice. "Mariana, open the door." "It's okay." Her blood ran cold. She looked at her husband. He was right there beside her, eyes wide with terror. That thing outside, it was mimicking their voices. Lucas walked slowly toward the window beside the door, trying to look outside without pulling the curtain back too far. What he saw made his heart stop for a second. The thing was no longer there. The porch was empty. The silence was suffocating. "Where did it go?" he whispered, and then Mariana saw it. Her eyes widened as she pointed to the ceiling. Lucas followed her gaze. Something was hanging from the eaves of the roof. The gray skin, the long limbs, the head tilted at an unnatural angle. He felt nausea rise in his throat. The creature moved erratically, turning its neck as if studying the house. Then it disappeared over the roof. Mariana covered her mouth, fighting against the panic. "It's trying to get in." Lucas scooped up Sophia in his arms and ran toward the hallway. "We need to get out of here." But Mariana froze in the middle of the room. Her gaze fell on the crumpled sheet of rules. The first rule: do not leave the house at night. Lucas understood in an instant. If they opened the door and tried to escape, it would catch them outside. They were trapped. Lucas's phone vibrated in his pocket. He grabbed the device immediately, his hands shaking. It was a message from the realtor. "Don't open the door. Don't leave the house. If it mimics your voice, ignore it. It wants you to break a rule." A chill ran up Lucas's spine. It was too late. They had already responded to the voices. Sophia started crying softly in her father's arms. Mariana grabbed the phone and typed desperately, "What happens if we break a rule?" The realtor read the message, but didn't respond. The silence in the house grew even heavier. And then they heard the sound of glass breaking from upstairs. Mariana swallowed hard. What was that? Lucas turned to Sophia, who was still crying. "Sophia, sweetheart, is there a window open in your room?" The little girl looked at him, sniffling. I left the bathroom window open before I left." Lucas's stomach churned. Mariana's eyes widened. "It's in." The upstairs was dark. Lucas slowly ascended the stairs, holding a kitchen knife. Mariana was right behind him, holding Sophia's hand. A strange smell filled the air, something sour and metallic, like rusted iron mixed with rotten meat. The second-floor hallway seemed larger than usual, as if the shadows were distorting the space. Then they heard it, breathing, coming from inside Sophia's bathroom. Lucas's heart raced. He glanced at Mariana. She shook her head, whispering, "Don't open that door." But Lucas already knew. The bathroom door was slightly ajar, and through the narrow gap he saw an eye far too large, far too white. The pupil contracted to the maximum, as if it wasn't used to the light. He felt the knife slip from his sweaty hand. The thing inside the bathroom smiled, and then it started to crawl out. The creature dragged itself across the floor, slowly emerging from the bathroom. Its body was elongated and skeletal, skin stretched tight over irregular bones. Its arms and legs seemed disproportionate, with long, pointed fingers bending unnaturally. But what terrified Lucas the most was its face, or rather, the absence of one. It had some sort of smooth skin where a nose, mouth, and ears should be. Only the eyes were visible, large, opaque, and expressionless. It was watching them, and then it tried to speak. The voice that came out was an imperfect echo, a distorted sound, like an old radio playing a recording. "D-Dad?" Lucas felt his body freeze. It was trying to mimic Sophia's voice. Mariana covered their daughter's mouth, stopping her from screaming. The creature inched closer, its bones cracking with each movement. Lucas scanned the surroundings. The hallway seemed smaller, the shadows alive, pulsing around them. Then it hit him. The rules. He pulled his phone from his pocket with trembling hands and opened a list. If it had managed to get inside, there must be something they could do. His eyes raced through the instructions, and then he saw it. Rule 5. If something enters a house and speaks to you, do not answer. Lucas's heart sped up. He had already responded to the thing's voice. Slowly, he turned his gaze back to the creature. It was closer now, so close that he could see the tiny, involuntary movements of the faceless skin, as if it was trying to shape itself, mimic the appearance of something. Mariana noticed it at the same time he did. "It wants to become you." Lucas felt a shiver run down his spine. The thing tilted its head, as if analyzing every detail of his face. And then it took a step forward. That was enough to make him panic. Lucas grabbed Sophia and ran. Mariana followed, her bare feet thudding against the wooden floor. The hallway seemed to stretch impossibly, as if they would never reach the end. The thing behind them moved way too fast. A horrible sound echoed through the hallway, something between a muffled scream and a distorted growl. Lucas saw the door to their room approaching and did the only thing he could. He ran inside and slammed the door shut. Mariana locked the door with trembling hands. Sophia was sobbing quietly, her eyes wide open. From the other side, the sound began. Scratches. First light, then stronger. The creature was trying to get in. Lucas looked around the room, desperate. What do we do now? Mariana grabbed her phone and furiously typed a message to the realtor. It's in, "What do we do?" The message was delivered. He read it, but he didn't reply. Lucas cursed under his breath. The scratching on the door grew more intense. Mariana tried calling the realtor, but the call wouldn't go through. That's when she noticed something. In the corner of the room, behind the dresser, a trapdoor. Her eyes widened. "Lucas, look at this." Lucas followed his wife's gaze and saw the small wooden door embedded in the floor. Was this here before? Mariana shook her head. The thing outside stopped scratching. The silence was worse than the noise. Lucas felt a chill run down his spine. Then they heard a click on the doorknob. The door was opening on its own. Mariana yanked Lucas, and both hurried over to the trapdoor. Lucas pulled it open and revealed a stone staircase descending into the darkness. Their only option was to go down. The bedroom door opened fully, and in the dark doorway, something was dragging itself inside. Lucas held Sophia tightly and plunged into the darkness of the passage. Mariana followed right behind and pulled the trapdoor shut above them. The room disappeared. They were in the house's basement, and down there, something was waiting for them. The darkness was total, but the air was thick, a musty, damp smell hanging around them. Lucas felt the weight of the tension increase with every passing second in the dark, his heart pounding loudly, almost deafening. He held Sophia tightly, the child now quieter, her eyes wide with fear. Mariana was by his side, trembling but silent. The trapdoor had closed behind them, and now they were alone in the unknown. The staircase they had descended seemed endless. When their feet finally touched the ground, they realized they were in a narrow, damp stone corridor. Looking up, the ceiling was low and covered in a thick layer of cobwebs, as if time had stopped there. It was a claustrophobic feeling, the air too heavy, as if the house was slowly swallowing them. "What is this?" Mariana murmured, her voice tense, almost a whisper. Lucas didn't have an answer. He just knew they couldn't go back to the surface. The thing, the creature, it had followed them down there, and now it seemed like the rules had been lost. There was no way to know what to follow or what to expect. They walked down the stone corridor, the sound of their steps echoing ominously, as if the house itself was listening and waiting. There was no light except for the faint glow from Lucas's phone. He didn't know how long they had been walking, but everything seemed to drag on in a warped, stretched-out time. The fear grew stronger with each step they took. Then, they reached a rusty iron door, covered in strange symbols, like runes carved into the surface. The doorknob was covered in a thick layer of dust. Mariana hesitated before reaching for it, but Lucas pulled her back. "There's something wrong here." Before they could think of another option, the scratching sound echoed down the hallway again. Closer, the thing was right behind them. Desperate, Mariana looked at Lucas. "Open it. We have to go now." He knew there was no other choice. Lucas pushed the iron door with all his strength, and it gave way with a sharp crack. A strong, acidic smell immediately flooded his senses. The room ahead was massive, but it felt ancient, forgotten by time. The floor was covered in rotting wood debris, and in the center of the room, there was some sort of altar. The altar was made of dark stone and covered in objects that Lucas couldn't identify. But there was something there that caught his attention. In the middle of the altar, there was a hooded figure, seemingly trapped in some kind of structure, its arms and legs stretched out in an unnatural way. Sophia clung to Lucas, trying to hide behind him. Mariana looked at the figure and screamed quietly. What is this?" Lucas, feeling the panic rising inside him, looked around. The walls of the room were covered with inscriptions and figures of eyes, as if something was constantly watching them. Then, at the back of the room, a stone door began to open slowly. It was as if the house had finally decided to reveal itself to them. And before they could react, a dark, pulsating light began to emerge from the opening, enveloping the altar and the surrounding walls. From within the light, a low, almost inaudible voice began to speak, a whisper that penetrated Lucas's mind, making him lose his ability to think. "Welcome to the house. You are the chosen ones." Lucas's blood ran cold. He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't respond. The creature was near, closer than ever. He felt its eyes on his back, watching every movement, every breath. Then, abruptly, everything stopped. The light vanished. The creature was no longer there. The room fell silent. But the sound of knocking on the stone door began, as if something was trying to get out. The voice echoed again, clearer this time, in a deep and suffocating tone. "The house has chosen you. There is no way out." Lucas looked at Mariana, his eyes full of terror. He knew in that moment that whatever this house was, it wasn't going to let them leave. And the eyes at the back of the room began to glow.